What's up, 10 Squad? Welcome back to another Brawl Stars video. So let's talk about Amber's super. It's a really interesting mechanic, and we really haven't seen anything like it before in Brawl Stars. So I've been able to calculate a bunch of different statistics about this super, as well as some general tips on when's the best time to use the super, when you should ignite it, so that way you can get better with playing the new Brawler Amber, and hopefully push a lot of trophies. So her super throws that flask of oil that spreads the oil all over the ground and leaves it in a very specific pattern. So there's a thin trail of oil leading up to a giant pool where the actual container of oil hits the ground. Then when you attack it with your main attack, it ignites at that particular point where you hit the oil, and then the fire will slowly spread. It takes about a second to spread over the entirety of the puddle of oil, and then it will disappear. If it hits anyone, they will take 4 ticks of 700 fire damage, 1 tick per second. So 2800 total damage guaranteed if you get hit by this super. Now, to charge up this super, you need to hit 17 flames. And if you actually hit anyone with your super, that'll also charge up your next super by 1/12 for each tick of damage that you hit. So since you're basically guaranteed to hit 4 ticks when you hit your super, that's going to charge up your next super by 1/3. So here I drew this scale diagram of Amber's super with the red circle for reference as the aiming circle that you'll actually see in game when you're dragging to aim your super, compared to the dark purple tiles, which is just where the oil is going to land. And you can see the oil is perfectly aligned with the tile, so it's not going to land in a perfect circle. It's going to be very boxy, and either the oil will be on a tile fully or it won't be on the tile at all. So that pool of oil at the end is 5 tiles wide, and the trail of oil leading up to the center of that circle is 7 tiles long, but it's 6 tiles from where Amber is actually standing, because she also drops oil on the tile that she's standing on when she uses her super. Now, one of the best ways to use Amber's super is to just ignite it immediately. So right after you use your super, if you just immediately use a normal attack, it's going to set that trail of oil on fire, and then by the time the flask of oil actually hits the ground and the main pool comes up, it will be instantly ignited, and anyone in that range is going to instantly take damage without any delay. And 2800 damage is a lot. So if you ignite it instantly, you're essentially just lobbing a huge bomb of area damage that does 2800 to anyone it hits, which sounds pretty good, not gonna lie. Now, if you think about it from the opponent's perspective, so if you're trying to dodge this super, what is the best way to go about it so that way you don't just take a guaranteed 2800 damage if they ignite it instantly? So if we look at the diagram, if you're right in the center of the pool of oil, which is like the worst case scenario because you have to travel the farthest to fully get outside of the puddle, then you can pretty clearly see that traveling along these yellow lines that I've added in is the longest way out of the puddle, because it extends the farthest out of that red circle, meaning it's the farthest distance, because the distance to any point on that red circle is the same. So you basically want to avoid these directions. So even though where the corners are chopped off, it looks like that might be a really good path to go down, because part of it is even inside the red circle where you're not going to be taking damage, because it's so close to those longer diagonals, and because your hitbox is so large, it's actually not going to be a good idea to try to run away from the super diagonally. And these are going to be the red arrows here. What you actually want to do is go along the green arrows and either just go straight backwards, straight to the left, or straight to the right. And because you're far enough away from those longest yellow paths that I was talking about before, these are going to be the quickest paths and most consistent paths to dodge the super if you see that an Amber is trying to aim at you. So along these paths, you're going to have to travel about 4 tiles to get your entire hitbox fully out of range of the super. But the projectile speed for Amber's super is actually only 1.3 seconds, and if you subtract 0.25 seconds from that, because that's like how long the average human reaction time is, and maybe add just a little bit back because you might be able to predict it in advance if you see how the Amber is moving or you see that she's aiming her super, you'll basically have 1.1 to 1.2 or so seconds to fully dodge this super and hopefully make it out alive. But since most brawlers only have a movement speed of like 2.4 to 2.5 tiles per second, multiply that by those 1.1 or 1.2 seconds, and you've only got a little over 2.5 tiles of movement in that time. So you're nowhere near the 4 tiles needed to fully dodge this super, meaning that Amber can literally just auto-aim anyone, which puts them in the center of the pool, which is that worst case scenario we were talking about, and you just won't have enough time to actually dodge the super. So if an Amber is looking at you, she auto-aims her super and then immediately ignites it, there's literally nothing you can do to avoid that super, unless your speed is boosted from a teammate max or something like that. So with this in mind, you know that Amber's super can just output 2800 damage whenever wherever you want. And even if you don't leave the oil on the ground, that's a very good base amount of damage. And so you always want to consider when you're using her super, if you don't want to ignite it immediately and you just want to leave it on the ground, is the value that I'm going to get from this, is the control that I'm going to gain from denying all this area, from denying all these opponents from walking on my oil, is that more than the free 2800 damage I can get by just auto-aiming on someone and immediately igniting it? And that's going to basically dictate how you're going to use her super in the middle of matches. Another cool thing you can do with Amber's super is actually ignite only the trail and leave the entire pool to just sit there on the ground. This is really hard to do. You have to use your normal attack immediately after you use the super with very little delay time in between. So it's kind of inconsistent to pull off, but I think if you practice it a lot, you should be able to get it down. But the benefit of doing this is that you essentially get to ignite one super 2 times. So if someone is pretty close to you and you know they're going to be in the way of the trail of your super, then you can throw your super over top of them, ignite only the trails so they get hit by that fire damage, and then you'll still have that pool of oil to use to ignite someone else and deal 5600 total damage to someone if they also walk onto the pool. And another advantage to doing this is that sometimes you just don't want the trail there, because if you're trying to fight someone, if that super long trail is blocking your path, you might not be able to reach them without accidentally igniting your super and essentially making it useless and getting no damage out of it. So in those cases where you know you still want to be fighting with someone, it might be good to only spawn the pool by immediately igniting the trail, so that way you'll still have a lot of room to attack other people without the fear of accidentally triggering your super. Now obviously you can get a similar effect by literally just using the super directly on top of you and spawning just the pool that way, but that's worse for 2 reasons, because you can't throw it far away from you, so you have to actually physically move to the location where you want to have this area denial, which sometimes can be a bit too dangerous, and also you don't have the potential to do double damage. So since you're not igniting the trail, you don't have the ability to hit someone twice. That's not something you're going to use often, but it still is something to consider. So overall, Amber has a really powerful super, and in modes where center control is basically what you're doing the entire game, like gem grab and siege, you're just staying in the center, collecting things the whole game. Her super, you just kind of want to leave it down as long as possible, because if people see that huge pool of oil on the field, they really can't walk over it without some sort of fear of taking 2800 damage, which is a big blow to a lot of brawlers. So if you just leave that down, you have essentially permanent area control, and that is going to be really useful for those modes. And then once your team has that control, you can basically just use your super and ignite it instantly, so that way you can get that free 2800 damage, get kills, and help your team maintain the control. And for other modes that aren't gem grab and siege, I feel like mostly you want to ignite it instantly, but there are also plenty of times where you just want to leave it down on the ground, because area control is helpful in basically any single mode. Like I said, you sort of have to evaluate the situation and see whether or not that free 2800 damage is really going to be worth it and get you a lot of value in the current situation you're in. So make sure to join the Sen Squad by subscribing, turning on notifications, going to your settings, and enabling notifications there as well. But that's all for today, guys, so see you later.